"Sir, do you have a reservation, or did you simply get lost?" Julian Croft's voice was smooth as velvet but cold as ice, rising beneath the colossal chandeliers of crystal. Golden shards of light fell across the polished black marble floor, glimmering like a frozen lake in midwinter. The entire lobby of the Obsidian froze for a beat, as if that question was both a greeting and a blade. Elias Vance stood alone in the circle of brightness. No tailored suit wrapped his body, only a worn leather jacket frayed at the shoulders, carrying the scent of rain from long, dusty roads. His boots bore a haze of dirt that no silk cloth could polish away, the kind of dirt gathered on endless journeys, the residue of memories that never fade. He stood upright and still, like an ancient oak, holding firm in a forest of glittering glass. Behind the reception desk, Julian's figure was fixed, like a bronze statue placed with perfect precision. His navy suit, cut razor-sharp, hugged his tall, lean frame. The silk tie was knotted so tightly it seemed to choke. A golden clip gleamed like an exclamation mark in a story only he had the right to write. His fingers tapped lightly on the marble. Counter. Each click as cold and sharp as raindrops striking steel. Every lift of his brow passed sentence. At his side, Anya Sharma's hand clenched unseen beneath the desk. Her eyes flicked toward the glowing computer screen, just for a second, enough to see the name displayed there. Vance, Elias, Obsidian, Sweet. Her heart jolted with the instinct to speak, but Julian's cutting glance slid over her like a knife against skin. She swallowed hard, the sound loud in her own chest. Conscience and fear pulled her apart like two ropes stretching the same heart. At the far corner, Sarah Cameron placed her teacup on a silver tray, the porcelain's tap against metal ringing like a signal. She glanced at her husband, Ben. One nod was enough. They understood without words. Both turned their gaze toward the desk, and Ben tilted his phone, camera lens discreetly capturing. The reflex of a journalist, already sensing the storm before the clouds arrived. No one else in. The lobby spoke, but silence thickened around them. A few older guests stole quick glances, then turned back to their martinis. The doorman shifted uneasily but did not move forward. Everyone waited, unwilling spectators in a drama they had not paid to watch but could not escape. Elias said nothing, his storm-gray eyes fixed on Julian. They held no anger, no defiance, only a stillness that unsettled the air. It was the stillness before a gunshot, the breath trapped in a soldier's chest, awaiting the order to charge. Julian's lips curved, in a smile that never touched his eyes. To him, Elias was no guest, only an intruder dragging the dirt of long roads across the glass lake he guarded. Anya bit her lip, tasting iron. Every second clawed at her skin like a clock hand turned to steel. She saw the stark divide, the crushing weight of inherited power on one side, the immovable stance of a man who had nothing to prove on the other, and she herself, trapped between silence and fear. From the bar came the soft strains of a nocturne, gentle enough to feel like mockery. The chandeliers cast their dazzling reflections across marble, but in Elias's eyes the light was cold, unable to warm hands that had once gripped a rifle in the rain. Still he did not speak. His broad shoulders beneath the scuffed jacket seemed to say that not everyone who walked into the Obsidian came to bow before its glow. Julian tilted his head, eyes narrowing. A long blink, as though tolerating a child, though his patience bristled with thorns. "I'll ask again," he murmured, the voice soft but sharp enough to cut the air. "Do you have a reservation? Or are you lost?" The silence compressed. A young guest near the elevator slammed down his glass, the sound echoing. Every head turned back to Elias. Sarah shifted slightly, her silver bracelet chiming like an alarm bell as it struck her glass. Ben's grip tightened on his phone, its glow reflected in his eyes. Elias lifted his chin, only slightly, like a wave rising against stone. His silence itself became an answer. defiance without words. A bead of sweat trickled across Anya's temple. She knew this moment could not be undone. It was not a simple check of identity. It was the instant when the very foundations of a building, one raised on opulence, prejudice, and history, began to crack. And standing in those fissures was Elias Vance, not a lost wanderer, but the storm waiting to break. Vance. Obsidian sweet. Elias's voice rolled out low and steady, like the undertow striking stone cliffs. Not a tremor, not an emphasis, not an attempt to prove. Just 3 words, yet heavy enough to thicken the air. Julian narrowed his eyes and bent over the keyboard, fingers dancing through a familiar pantomime. The screen glowed, its reflection gleaming in his calculating stare. And then he looked up, a smirk sliding across his face. How unfortunate! The system shows no record of that name under our most exclusive suite. His words glided like oil, but beneath the sheen lurked the rancid smell of deceit. A cold draft swept through Elias's memory. He was no longer standing in the Obsidian. He was back 20 years earlier, in the sterile shine of a bank office. A young man with a military crop and a worn uniform sat gripping a thick folder of documents across from a credit officer. The banker wore a gleaming suit and crimson tie, his eyes reflecting like glass, mirroring but never seeing. "This is a data analysis algorithm," Elias had said, voice brimming with belief. "I'm certain it can change the industry." But the words were severed by an indifferent nod. The officer glanced at the file for less than 3 seconds before setting it aside like a dead stone. His eyes lingered instead on Elias's calloused hands, on the faded cloth of his service uniform. "Listen, son," he said, his tone dipped more in pity than contempt. "We appreciate your service, we really do. But the world isn't built by dreamers with dust on their boots. Be realistic." That moment had pierced Elias like a bullet. No, wound in flesh, but a scar carved straight into pride. The click of Julian's keyboard yanked him back to the present. That word, error, was not just a fresh insult, but the echo of 1,000 old cuts. More images rose. A gala night. Years later, when his company had begun to make ripples. He had a ticket in hand, a cheap coat on his shoulders, standing beneath the rain as the paper grew damp. A towering guard blocked the glass entrance. "Sorry, sir. Private event." "I have a ticket," Elias had replied, calm and steady. But the guard's eyes swept once over his rain-soaked clothes and stopped. A shake of the head. Nothing more was needed. He had stood there, rain seeping into his skin, while inside, behind the glass, people in his industry shook hands, laughed, loudly, raised champagne. He was a ghost locked outside a banquet of power. That night, he had made a vow, not to be recognized by them, but to one day buy the very walls that had shut him out. Now Julian's voice dripped into his ears. "You know, there are certain levels of clientele we serve here." Each word dropped like an ice stone, stirring every scar layered beneath. Elias's gray eyes blinked once, catching the glare of crystal chandeliers. Not light, but shadows of memories that never faded. Anya saw it. She caught the flicker of hurt in his gaze, there and gone too quickly for anyone else to notice. But she, who had learned to read the smallest shifts in her customers' faces, felt it cut across her heart like a blade. She opened her mouth. "His name is in the system, But Julian turned, eyes pressed against her throat like steel. She froze, breath raw. Fear pressed in. Fear of losing her job, losing the money she sent home, losing everything. The silence in the lobby stretched. Everyone felt the fracture forming. The piano's tune shifted, jazz rhythms quickening, echoing Anya's racing heart. Sarah Cameron leaned forward, brown hair spilling over her shoulder, eyes narrowing like a camera lens. She felt the injustice, clawing her skin. Ben glanced down at his phone. The red word, live, glowed bright. The audience was already gathering. Julian pressed on. "I'm afraid you're mistaken. Perhaps you might try your luck at other hotels, ones more suited to your kind." His words slid into the air, their aftershock rippling through the lobby. Some guests shook their heads, others pretended not to hear. None intervened. Only their eyes remained, heavy with silence. Elias drew in a slow breath. His hand brushed the edge of his leather jacket, scarred, rain-soaked, burdened with years of humiliation. He did not shout. He did not justify. But he knew in this moment that the shining walls of the Obsidian had just suffered their first crack. "For security reasons, we need to verify your identity." Julian extended his long hand, his tone as smooth as an attorney's closing argument, but his eyes carried nothing but disdain. "Your wallet, please." The words struck the lobby like a slap. This was no longer a veiled question but a public stripping of dignity. In his eyes, Elias was not a guest but a suspect, a dust-covered intruder who dared step into this gleaming world. The silence tightened until the faint clink of glasses on a silver tray rang out across the room. A few guests turned their backs, pretending not to witness, but their stiff shoulders betrayed the weight of their own evasion. Elias did not move. His gray eyes remained fixed on the hand extended toward him. The look was neither resistance nor surrender. It was the gaze of an old soldier staring into a rifle barrel, seasoned enough that nothing could surprise him anymore. Sarah Cameron suddenly rose to her feet, her chair screeching against marble in a sharp protest that drew heads. She strode forward, phone already raised, lens aimed steady. Her voice rang out clear and unshaken. "We are recording. Demanding and holding a person's wallet without just cause can be considered unlawful detainment. Do you understand that, manager?" Her words sliced through the suffocating air like a blade through velvet. In an instant, the room ignited. Ben, who had been live-streaming for minutes, glanced down at his screen. Comments flooded. "God, what hotel is this? Disgusting. Who is that man to treat someone this way?" Behind the desk, Anya's body burned with adrenaline. Sarah's courage was a spark tossed into the barrel of powder inside her. Her hands shook, no longer from restraint but from release, and she stepped forward. Her voice cracked yet held firm. "Stop. His name is Elias Vance, Obsidian Suite. Paid in advance. I confirmed it myself this morning." The words echoed, sharp and undeniable, impossible to recall once spoken. The entire lobby fell breathless. Julian spun around. For the first time his icy composure splintered. Color surged into his face, eyes blazing. "You're fired! Get out!" he roared, his finger stabbing toward Anya's face like a spear at a traitor. He whirled back on Elias, his voice breaking with fury. "Security! Remove all of them, now!" Heavy footsteps thundered. Two massive guards in black suits strode in, earpieces glinting, eyes hidden behind shades, though indoors. They advanced. On Elias, each step hammering the marble like a death drum. Anya didn't think. She moved. Instinct drove her body to leap in front of Elias, breath ragged, eyes ablaze. Her slender frame stood against two giants, hopelessly outmatched. Yet, she did not waver. Then a hand rested lightly on her shoulder. Elias's hand, firm, steady, calming. He did not pull her back. He simply anchored her. His eyes lifted slowly to the advancing guards. No fear, no anger. Only that strange serenity. The serenity of a man who had stared down death and learned that truth could never be buried. The lobby transformed into a stage. Chandeliers shimmered like spotlights overhead. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the climax. No music now, only the pounding. Hearts of witnesses. Elias drew in a long breath. In his eyes, the golden light fractured, tangled with rising darkness. No one knew what he would do, but everyone felt it. The gilded wall of the Obsidian had cracked, and when the crack spread, Nothing would hold back the flood. No one in the Obsidian lobby dared to breathe too loudly. The two guards advanced, their shadows spreading across the marble floor like vast black curtains. Each step landed heavy, echoing like a death drum announcing an execution. Behind the reception desk, Julian's lips curled upward. He thought victory was certain, that within seconds this man would be dragged out like a vagrant caught trespassing. Elias did not move. Slowly he slipped a hand into his jacket. A few guests gasped, thinking he would draw a weapon. But no, it was only a phone, old, framed in scratched metal. He lifted it to eye level, his voice deep but steady. "Nia, initiate Protocol 0. No human voice answered. Instead, from the ceiling speakers usually reserved for jazz, a synthetic tone rang out, flat and unfeeling. Protocol 0 activated. Ownership verified, Elias Vance. All managerial access codes at the Obsidian are now revoked. A harsh beep followed. The green light on Julian's monitor turned crimson. He jolted, swiping his manager's card frantically. On screen, red letters blazed. Access denied. Again and again he tried. Each shrill beep struck like a nail into a coffin. His face drained of color, the mask of confidence peeling away to reveal raw panic. The guards froze when their earpieces chirped in unison. They glanced at one another, then pivoted sharply, bowing low toward Elias. Their voices rumbled through the hall. "Apologies, sir." A wave of murmurs swept the room. Guests who had hidden in silence now stared wide-eyed. Then a single clap rang from the corner, hesitant, but quickly joined by another, and another. Applause swelled like fire racing through dry grass, drowning out music, drowning out breath. Anya stood paralyzed, hand covering her mouth as tears welled and spilled. The man she had tried to shield was, in truth, the master of this place. Sarah lowered her phone, a thin, sharp smile tugging at her lips. "We've got it," she whispered to Ben. He nodded, eyes glued to the screen streaming thousands of furious comments. The clapping roared louder, not only for Elias, but as a release of everything suppressed, the satisfaction of those long judged, dismissed, belittled for appearances. Julian's scream cracked beneath the thunder. "You can't! This is my hotel!" But even he knew his words were hollow. His computer, his keycard, every shred of power had slipped from his hands like sand through grasping fingers. Elias said nothing. His hand still rested lightly on Anya's shoulder. His gray eyes swept the lobby, not triumphant, not angry, but carrying the heaviness of a soldier who had watched an enemy stronghold collapse. Victory, yes, but not joy. A long breath escaped him. In that moment, the Obsidian was no longer a glittering hotel. It was a fortress whose dam had burst, truth rushing in to wash away its gilded veneer. Anya broke into sobs, not of fear, but of release. Sarah gripped Ben's arm tighter, whispering, "Do you hear it? That's the sound of the dam breaking." The entire lobby rose to its feet, applause crashing like a storm. And in that roar, Julian Croft fell. Not with a single blow, but piece by piece, as every shard of arrogance shattered into dust. Applause thundered through the lobby of the Obsidian like a storm no force could hold back. Hands that had once clapped politely for music or speeches now poured their power into this single moment, the moment when justice was no longer an abstraction, but stood living before their eyes. Julian Croft clung to the marble counter, his hands trembling violently. His face had gone chalk white, his eyes darting, desperate for escape. But there was nowhere left to run. Even the employees who had once stood at his side now avoided his gaze, quietly edging away as if afraid of being stained by the ghost of a man collapsing in real time. Elias Vance stepped forward. He did not need to raise his voice. When the storm of applause gradually faded, only his deep timbre filled the vast space. This building is made of marble and steel, but a hotel, a home, cannot stand without the foundation of respect." He paused, his gaze sweeping across every face. Employees, guests, and all who had held their breath through the ordeal. "You have violated that foundation." Julian's lips twitched as if to answer, but no words formed. Elias turned, his voice sharp as command. "Julian Croft, Lauren Pierce, and anyone who followed, you are all terminated, effective immediately." There were no guards to drag them away. None were needed. Shame weighed heavier than chains. Julian stumbled, clutching at the counter until his golden tie clip clattered onto marble with a hollow chime. Lauren and the others bowed their heads and filed out, crossing through a forest of condemning eyes. The great revolving door closed behind them with a sound like the lid of a coffin. The lobby held silence for one beat longer. Then every eye turned toward Elias. He wore no fine suit, no high pedestal beneath his feet, only a battered leather jacket and boots dusted by long roads. Yet never had he looked more like the embodiment of power. Anya stood frozen, her eyes swollen with tears, her breath short. She had faced rage, lost her job, and witnessed a truth beyond imagination. Now she stood hollow, on the edge of collapse. Elias reached into his jacket and drew out a black metal card. No name, only the insignia of the Obsidian etched deep, gleaming under the chandelier. He placed it into her trembling hand. The Obsidian needs a new architect, someone who understands that foundations are not marble, but people. Are you ready? Anya stared at the card. Cold in her palm, yet heavy as if she carried an entire building. Her lips quivered, a tear dropped onto the steel surface, and she nodded. The applause surged again, louder than before, not for Elias. For her, the receptionist, once threatened and silenced, has now risen as the symbol of change. Sarah Cameron trained her camera on the moment, whispering, "This is the real story." Ben nodded beside her, his phone alive with an avalanche of furious comments, his lips curving into a faint, satisfied smile. Behind them, Julian and his allies vanished into the dark. They were not dragged away, but their steps faltered, waited as if the shadows themselves expelled them. Guests continued to clap, their eyes cold with disdain, escorting the disgraced with nothing but contempt. Elias withdrew to the glass wall, standing alone before the vast window overlooking New York. The city lights glittered, each one a trembling star against the urban night. He pressed his palm to the cold glass, the chill seeping through his skin. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He only exhaled, a long breath, the breath of a soldier who had finally completed his mission. For years he had fought not merely to own a building, but to prove that dignity could not be buried beneath gilded light. Behind him, Anya still clutched the card, her shoulders trembling. Other employees drifted toward her, eyes filled with respect. Guests began to murmur, some smiling, some nodding, as though they too had witnessed the birth of something new. The Obsidian still towered, its gilded ceilings and crystal chandeliers blazing. But the light that truly ignited tonight did not come from marble or glass. It came from a moment when humanity reclaimed its rightful place. Elias stood still, his shadow stretched across black marble like the figure of a living statue. In his gray eyes, no storms raged, only the calm of a sea after battle. And within those walls, a new era had begun. The night at the Obsidian had ended, but its echo would endure. A reclusive billionaire, once a soldier scorned by the world, had proven at last that dignity cannot be bought, and respect is the only foundation upon which any home can be built. And what about you? Have you ever been judged wrongly because of appearance, or seen someone dismissed for their place in life? Share your story in the comments. You may inspire someone else. If you believe that justice and compassion still belong in this world, hit like, leave a comment, and share this video so more people can hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to Toch Story and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next tale. Stories that may enrage you, break your heart, but also warm it, and remind you to believe in the good. Because here at Toch Story, we believe every story of kindness deserves to be told, and every voice deserves to be heard.